Sup fellas, it's your boy Dick and Balls Grinder here. Wanted to cover off one of the one of the only games that really interested me at the YCS Bologna over the weekend, and that is Runick versus Horus Orchest. Now, I'm looking at this game from the perspective of a die-hard Runick player, and I'm here to show you that there was a way that this gentleman, I'm going to move myself down, Giol, there was a way that this gentleman could have absolutely won this match, and I think it's him losing is a result of him failing to identify where he could avoid losing the game. Now remember, if you've seen my 40 odd minute Runick Stun video, you would know that this game is not about how you win, it's about how to not lose. Because the longer you play, the more cards you draw, the more cards you're banished from your opponent's deck. So, all you're trying to do is not die, which means this 8,000 figure here just needs to not be 0. That's all that matters, particularly in game 1. So let's cover off exactly what's going on. Now, old mate here, Giol, has gone tip, it's been ashed. Look, that's bound to happen. And 1 day of peace to secure. Now, if my opponent is setting 1, I do assume that they are playing Tempai. In this, maybe I'm not assuming they're playing Tempai because they would have opted to go first. There is no information here that Giol can operate with that his opponent's playing any particular kind of deck. Any deck in the format can brick. This badly? Who knows? I might be thinking it's more of a pile deck. I might be asking how many cards are in the main, but who knows. Activating Slumber here to special summon. Now, this is probably the first mistake that Giol makes. Over the course of this game, Giol's win condition becomes to maintain the dimension fissure. Now again, he doesn't know this strictly, but you can assume that a lot of graveyard decks are going to be kept out of the game with this card. By putting a Hugin on the field, he's guaranteed that his opponent can now successfully imperm that column, which he does do later on in the replay. And like I've always said, if you are summoning Hugin to Search Fountain, you are 9 times out of 10 losing that game. And look, his Desires Banish 10, draw 2, and one of the cards in his hand, he draws 2 useless cards right now. One goes in match, and 1 Rainbow 5 Rainbow Magician, or something along those lines. In Giol's list are a couple of options that I disagree with, although ended up being decent picks based on everyone's preparation for the event, which ended up being a lot of Cash Tier, Fiendsmith pile decks with a lot of hand traps. I don't think this was the correct landscape for a Runick strategy, but this deck is also playing Grave of the Super Ancient Organism. Oh, here we go. So he normal summons the 5 Rainbow Magician. I believe this is, if I'm doing this, it's because I would like to go into an SP, but again, I don't see any value in this other than to try and clear this space in the extra monster zone. I don't think 5 Rainbow Magician has, say, there wasn't, you can't assume this was Super Poly, so I'm not going to give Giol a hard time for playing into this, but there is just no reason to normal summon a monster if all you're going to do is make SP into an opponent's field of no cards. There's no value. Now, Mud Dragon of the Swamp hits the board. Any Runick player will know that the Mud Dragon of the Swamp is by far the most terrifying card to face because you cannot target it and it can constantly make your other creatures untargetable. It can in this matchup, it's going to turn itself dark so many times. 19. Like, his opponent wasn't threatening any damage before, so freezing to summon, which is reasonable. It's here I'm trying to summon a Hugin, but with so many turns have passed that I don't see any value. There we go. In trying to summon Hugin to search. So Scrubbed Raid will end the battle phase by sending a card. Now that's fairly heads up because he does get to send his already face up Runick as cost. But I think in this situation, I'm just eating the hit. I don't see any value. Again, he's playing into another hand trap. This guy's probably got Ash. It's actually ridiculous that this goes unpunished at this point. Searching Fountain. So the Runick player should, in theory, have everything they need to win this game. As the Horus player, I'm going to try and leave that Hugin on the field for as long as possible. My win condition is negating that Hugin and then taking out cards like Runick Fountain or the back row with board wipes or clears without Hugin being able to protect them. Because if you didn't know, Skill Drain Imperm lingering on a Hugin will prevent it from being able to activate or apply its protection ability or protection condition. Setting 2, I'm automatically assuming that the set card is Imperm in that column, because why else would you put it there? Now, opponent, Gyal has drawn Card Trader. So you're seeing a lot of cards like this. You assume he's got Gozen in the main deck. He's probably got Rivalry in the main deck. He definitely has Tikaboo in the main deck. Scrubbed Raid in the main deck. Grave of the Super Ancient Organism by the end of this game. Defissure, Card Trader. There are just innumerable cards in this deck that don't do anything and that aren't effective floodgates when drawn in unison. At this stage, I'm almost saying play Messenger of Peace. It's just better card economy wise than Scrubbed Raid. Imseti getting rid of cards. So Gyal is already in a bad position, so he's got no Runick cards to play with. He should never have been in that position. Again, look, I don't think you can say to a player, hey, you shouldn't try and advance your own game, but I think using your only Runick to search for Fountain in the hopes that you draw another Runick after all of the spells that he saw banish off Desires. Like, I know we're playing a large volume of Runicks, but it put a Hugin on the field, which gave him Imperm possibilities. It really should have been negated, in my opinion. Yeah, and now that the Defissure is turned off because it's in the Imperm column, there is now nothing that the Runick player can do to really close out this game, or to survive. Like, even just surviving this turn is going to be extremely difficult. Because, note, he has Gozen Match face down. Even if he chooses to flip it, the Mud Dragon of the Swamp can change itself to dark in order to survive. Again, we just have effectively 3 dark monsters on the field. We have a Harp in the graveyard. There's just... Now, note, there was an issue with this game where a Harp was discarded. No, sorry, a Nightmare... Orcus Nightmare was discarded and Harp was put straight from the deck into the bin. I don't think it changed the outcome of this match. Also, it makes 0 sense to flip Gozen Match here when you could just let your opponent summon the Happy. If he's worried about the Happy or the Imseti triggering off the card going to graveyard, that isn't the case because the cards are being sent by game mechanic, not by card effect. You easily just let them summon the Happy and then Gozen. Because, like, why not? Why wouldn't you? You know, give your opponent as many opportunities to screw the pooch here. I'd love to be funnier about this, but honestly, the way the Runick player has handled this is very irritating. It could be the nerves of the feature match, but honestly, the Runick player is looking for the spotlight anyway, playing the stupid cry for help deck. Yeah, look, all of these mean that the game is over. Francesco can just go for the Dingisu at any point, which is going to protect him from absolutely everything going on later in this game. It's almost a foregone conclusion. Let me see if I can speed this up. Let's go to 2 times. Yeah, nothing's happening here. Gyal doesn't know what an Orcus card does, which is terrific for Francesco. And why would you know what an Orcus card does if you didn't play the game back in 2019? Brothers never seen Dingirsu. This is the one card. Heck, this is the funny part. I'm going to pause here. He opts to not read Dingirsu, even though it's potentially the most important card on Francesco's field. The fact that it can protect from destruction-based effects by detaching materials is going to come up later in this game, and he's just opted not to use it. Not to read it, sorry. I know he's feeling like a bit of a dope right now for not reading these cards, but you really should read if you are not sure. Yeah, nothing really is happening here. Essentially, can I go for the kill shot under Scrub Raid? Nope, because he's going to send it with Dingirsu. Perfect. I might even make the argument that you probably attach with Dingirsu here and you just keep burning cards with Scrub Raid. So you can just revive the Dingirsu later with Symbol Skeleton, with Babel. I think the Orcus player is probably not getting the most out of his cards right now. Yeah, going for a game shot here. Like, you might as well. Realizing that Nightmare has in fact targeted a monster and it increases the attack. For those of you who don't remember what the Orcus cards do, Orcus Nightmare does not just send an Orcus card from the deck to the graveyard. It does need to target a monster on the field to do it. There we go, Grave. That's going to absorb exactly one attack here, but one attack is enough. Yeah. Having one freezing curses here would have been really important. I know it's strange to say, but having that one freezing curses set still would have been really important for getting around all of this nonsense. It would have meant you could have survived an extra turn or like played, or just even had Gary, right? There we go, yeah, linking off. Perfect. Yep, SP makes perfect sense. Yep, that D-Fissure is never going to do anything for the rest of this game. The funny interaction that's going to come up is that Mud Dragon will return, will return to its original attribute, which means it is forced off the field by game mechanic for Gozen match. Sorry, I should have had this in 2 times speed the whole time. This is agony before. Let me change it to 1.75 so I don't miss anything. Yeah. So what have we got? We've got Card Trader, we've got Fountain in hand, and we've got... The last card is it just a Runick? Remember, we are also now dealing with a Crescendo set, which, for those of you who don't know, Crescendo negates the activation of a monster effect, spell, or trap, and then banishes it. Off of exactly Card Scanner, I would be hoping... Yeah, there's no reason, yeah. Francesco's not going to let you all have extra cards here. Note that the Runick Quick Play spell must successfully resolve. Its activation cannot be negated for Runick Fountain to be activated. Yeah. The game is just over here, and it didn't need to be. I think this game was extremely winnable for Gyol, and it all went downhill when he summoned the second Hugin. I disagree with even summoning the first Hugin. Like, you just get no card economy for summoning Hugin into, a format where, the best few decks are playing 18 hand traps. I know that he got ashed a couple of times, but I wouldn't have done it into a set imperm either. That's ridiculous. I'm going to skip over the signing and commentary. Let's go straight to game 2. Spoiler alert, Gyol does win the game 2. Now, he should be massively favoured here because it is a Runick deck, and all of the Horus and Orcus cards do really need to be going to the graveyard, and there's just no... Yeah. Everything is a key piece, so we're just going to speed through this game. Like, this is the hand is everything that a Runick player could possibly want going first. Keep in mind, we're looking at this timer 22:54. Now both players, I don't know if they are aware of this timer. They certainly should be allowed to, but it's strange if not. One of them has a watch here. Note it's like 6:20 in the evening, which is very late to still be playing a YCS level event. So I will allow for a certain amount of misplay due to stress and exhaustion. But a Runick deck really should pile itself once you know what you're doing. Again, he's drawn the perfect hand traps. I don't like. What upsets me is that he kept in cards like Grave of the Super Ancient Organism when it really doesn't do anything to anything but exactly Kashtira monsters. Strangely, it just doesn't do anything to any other deck. If I'm missing something, feel free to give me a hard time. But Grave of the Super Ancient Organism I have seen in every Runick deck that has categorically failed. Let me make sense of something here. Because I still think this is a misplay. Why wouldn't you just summon a Runick here in the end phase? There are two schools of thought, right? Either you can summon the Munin, gain the 1,000 life points, and offer yourself Cyclone protection, or you hold the Runicks for a potential board wipe. No, I think I agree with Girl's play here to just not play any Runicks here. Even just to summon a monster. Again, you have to identify what your lose conditions are, rather than how you're winning the game. Here we go. So Francesco adds King Sark off of him. Said he draws a card, and Girl's instinct is to slam Dispelling. If you can tell me what's wrong with this picture, jump straight in the comments, because let me tell you, the odds of hitting a card 1 out of 6 are 16.7, or rounded, pretty heavily rounded, 16.7% chance to hit the key piece out of your opponent's hand, even if you are just trying to resolve Fountain and draw a couple of cards. Your opponent has exactly one card you want to hit, and 5 potential bombs that if they hit the graveyard, Girl can start playing the game. Activating Dispelling here is absolute madness. This should have lost Girl the game on the spot, but instead it actually hits the King's Sarcophagus, which is ridiculous, and then banishes 2. And now we see Francesco is playing Dominus Impulse. That's important to remember for the rest of this game, because it means if at any point Francesco draws his board clear, he could negate the Runick summon with the Impulse. It's happened plenty of times. Francesco's hand is now... He's not giving off good vibes. I'll tell you that much. He's not particularly pleased. He's got no Ash to resolve. Deep Fissure has come out. Normal summoning, Harp Horror is not where you want to be as an Orcus player. You're pretty sure that's just going for damage. Again, I respect just taking the damage here and not doing anything about it. This might be controversial to say. Again, two schools of thought. You summon a Runick, so you don't take the damage. And not taking damage is pretty important. Now, even for a Runick player, there's 20 minutes on the clock. I don't know whether this guy is playing Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, but keep in mind that Runick players are not going to win the game by reducing your opponent's life points. Almost never. 1 out of 100 games, it'll happen. So if he's unable to drive down Francesco's deck, there's a possibility that he gets held hostage in this game at that exact life total, and it could cause him the end of the game. But with the way Francesco is playing this game, I don't know if that's necessarily... I mean, Francesco's done nothing wrong. He just got supremely unlucky Crescendo being hit's nice. Again, that would have been one of the potential bombs that the Dispelling could hit. Defissure, I think, does just end the game here, and one of the best draws. You can tip. Even if your opponent has Droll, they can't use it under Defissure because Droll states that it must be sent to the graveyard. Yeah, now you just continue searching Runics that have the highest banish totals. I forget if Golden Droplets is in the deck, but truthfully, I probably do. Yeah, Francesco sees the writing is on the wall. There's no coming back from that position. There's no board clears he can draw. He may not even be playing board clears. Pile decks have a pretty disconnected history with playing specific board clears, particularly ones like Lightning Storm, evenly matched, because they are trying to do the most with their engine rather than relying on hard drawn cards. Let's try and watch game 3. Let's see if there's anything that Giol can do to win this game 3. You do like seeing King Sark discarding a card and not getting King Sark with Imseti. That's a good feeling for you. Now you're seeing an Imperm discarded. Imperm being like the number 1 card that's good against, like, that's just generically good against Runick decks, because you know a Hugin's never resolving. So if Giol summons a Hugin at any given point in time, he really is in peril. You wouldn't do it. Like, you just don't give any value to the Imperm. For those of you who don't know what Coach King Giant Trainer does, essentially it is one of the only cards in the game that have a thrice per turn. So it requires 3 level 8s. Detach a material, draw a card if it is a monster, burn your opponent for 800, and you cannot conduct a battle phase the turn you use it. Obviously turn 1, who cares? It's a pretty good rank 8 toolbox deck. Dark World, Horus obviously. And plenty of level 8s in this deck to make use of it, not just the Horus monsters, but we also have Gizmek. How big's Harp Horror? World Wand. I don't know if it comes up. Like, the card says draw 3. Like, it replaces all the advantage you lost from the King Sark, but that's, your opponent, when you know your opponent isn't playing hand traps, it isn't going to punish you with a card like Ghost Sister, you tend to not care. And also, Ghost Sister is kind of weird against the Horus cards because your opponent could just stop if they wanted to. I would... 13 minutes, would I go down to half-life? Maybe not. In these games, I'm trying to get to the Ghost Sister, just for the purposes of making my opponent have to play a little faster, play a little sloppier. Again, Dingirsu, like, I hope Giol remembers the destruction part of this. Okay, what have we got? So we're looking at... Brother, come on. Did we not establish in that game that that's what Dingirsu... Okay, so our hand is... It looks like 4 Runics, Defissure, Skill Drain. And they all look like different Runics. So, we're just protecting at least no once per turn. Yep, picking up Dingirsu for the first time because Giol doesn't care. These Orcus decks aren't real. No, we have Desires as well. Like, this hand is actually everything that a Runic player would want. But instead he's thrown the first Runic away for no reason. So drawn Smiting Storm and Tip. Like, what a ridiculous draw. Again, you see a Cyclone. That's good news because now you know what you need to play around. If I'm Giol here, I'm probably looking at using a Runic. Okay, it's getting immediately crescendoed. Again, Tip could have searched any number of cards. Tip for me is searching Freezing Curses here. I probably okay. So this is how I play this turn. And if you're this deep in the video, you clearly care about what I have to say, which is, firstly, I'm flattered. But if you start with, what did he start with? He starts with Destruction. Then he Desires, which draws Tip and Smiting Storm. Truthfully, if this guy isn't under the pump, I'm probably activating Desires first and hoping that gets negated. We know this last set is Imperm because discarding an Imperm and not holding one is ridiculous. It's too good not to hold. We know that there's another King Sark sitting around here. Do we, or did we see him discard it? I'm too time poor to go back. But what could this have easily been is if the Desires gets negated, you now have a handful of Runicks in which to try and slow down your opponent long enough to keep him out of the game. Now, Babel's not up, so none of these Orcust effects are quick effects, which means Francesco isn't getting the same amount of value that he could be if Babel was on the field. He's got Skill Drain, so really I think what you're trying to do is you're avoiding summoning Runicks here to get around the Imperm, and then you are playing Skill Drain and trying to survive. I think if you play Skill Drain and survive for long enough, you might just get there. Again, Munin. Now, he's used the effect to gain life points and it's been chained with Imperm. Do I go ahead and assume that means there's a Cosmic Cyclone in the hand? I think it's very strange to chain Imperm here, to not let your opponent gain the 1,000 life points. Maybe he's forgotten that he's taken the 1,600. Yeah, we're just summoning a bunch of Horus monsters. Think about what this could have been if the draws off the Desires were the same, and we know they're going to be. We know that the draws are going to be Tip Smiting Storm, so Tip can then instead search for Freezing Curses. Now, you can start with with a D Fissure, or you don't know where Francesco's going to crescendo, but having that extra Runick, not do nothing, is really important here because you can try and nail the King Sark, and then Freezing Curses the Dingirsu to avoid it detaching, or even have the Skill Drain here. But there we go, Cyclone. Now, I believe he's going to try and, the one thing you need to know, Munin says you can only prevent the targeted activation of cards that are face down or that are Runicks. That includes itself. But unfortunately, Gil just went and earned himself a Pet Yamada on the way down. Again, this game is a bit of a foregone conclusion now because Gil's kind of thrown it. I do enjoy evaluating games as to whether they would have been winnable. I think that first game was extremely winnable, so I think, honestly, this game should have been the game where we're playing with 3 minutes left on the clock. Giol summons Immunin in the end phase, gains 1,000 life points, and then tries to hold their opponent off a good battle phase. But instead, all of his cards just got 0 value. Yeah, the game's just over here. You summon Freaky, right? You summon Freaky, you get a quick play back, maybe you survive a turn. Yes, Dingirsu will protect in the damage step. It's just a condition applying. Did we summon Slipnir? I don't see the value, yeah. And Gil loses pretty comfortably because he doesn't really know how to pilot his deck. And he just refused to pick up Runick cards. Very unfortunate. I think he could have pulled that out. Now, given his record already, maybe he wasn't having the best run. Maybe he got a bit unlucky. Maybe his opponents were drawing all the right hand traps, all the right removal. I think it was a pretty poor event to be bringing Runick when so many people were on Kashtira, and Kashtira cards are pretty inherently good for removing, just like Fenrir's just good at removing Fountain. That's really what it comes down to. But yeah, look, thank you for dropping in and checking out my breakdown of the video. I honestly spoke way more clearly than I thought I was going to. It's like 11:50 at night, and clearly I'm passionate enough about this deck to stringing together a series of coherent thoughts, enough that hopefully you get some value out of it, or maybe you just enjoy someone with an awkward Australian voice on your drive home. Anyway, that'll be enough for me. Go check out the store. I'm not putting ads on this, so bye.